So in today's discussion we are going to see a scroll view example and how to handle the universal layout. I mean adding the constraint by ourselves. I'm not going to add or I'm not going to depend on the reset to suggested constraint, but I will still try to get any suggestion given by Xcode. In fact, it's quite intelligent than us. So let's create an app. Please scroll example something. Okay. Like other example, this also may not require any Objective-C or Swift code to be added because it is what we are going to discuss on the constraint part. So we end up doing a lot of things here, but the understanding is very important. Of course, the practice needed. Uh, while you practice, you would have a number of questions as well. So that depends. Okay, we have a habit of putting everything into a navigation controller. Even though I'm not going to need a lot of subsequent view stack, I better start with this pane. Where is this one? We have a view controller. Remember, the view controller already has a view object or UI view has been already added. In fact, I'm not going to need that. I removed the view, so view controller is empty. I'm going to add a scroll view. All in just drag and set it, it will automatically, since it is the very first component or very first view, it will automatically set into the required width and height automatically. You don't need to do any kind of thing, just drag and put it, it will fully occupy because this is a very base view of your view controller. Mean this is the first view of your view controller. Scroll view typically it's a kind of a view which adds gives option to overflow the content. Mean any content which is going outside of your view, you can scroll it up. So just a kind of a wrapper you may assume. So how I can do it? First point, in the size inspector, okay, let me highlight the view controller. So this attribute inspector, if you see there are a hell lot of options are there. In that I'm going to use a free form. Means the reason I add a scroll view because I would like to display a longer content, a bigger content. So for testing purpose or to add or drag and drop components, I may need a slightly bigger view controller. For example, a standard. Remember, it is any width and height, any it has been set. So it is not targeting any single device. It is targeting universal devices. So in that case, for testing, assuming the scroll view is the view controller is going to be slightly bigger. 1600. It was 600 before. I made it as a 1600. View controller slightly bigger. This is not going to modify anything in your phone. I just so that I can drag a view, I can create a longer content, and that content, any overflowing component will be having a scroll view already added in while you run the device. So for testing purpose, I made it. I'll use the iPhone 5s because the smaller device, a bigger device, sometimes the scroll view might not be needed because the content may be fitting enough. For a smaller device, we can very well test it. Okay, I added a scroll view, and I'm going to add a UI view. It's called view in this case. I'm going to drag it here. See, you should be pretty careful. The highlighted content, this is what it is, an empty view. So first point, let us set where you'd like to see them. I'm going to keep X and Y position 0. Remember, as far as mobile form factor, the X and Y is always on the top left. It is not as you think in your graph. Usually the graph, what we in the maths we write in the bottom corner. So in this case, it is top left, always 0 0, always in the top left. And I'm going to give the same width and height of my view controller so that it fully occupies. So inside the scroll view, I added a subview called just a view. How I can verify? See the scroll view inside looks like it is nested. So a scroll view has a subview called view. Okay. Now, first point, we have done it. In most of the case, what I would have done, reset to suggested constraint, I would have done it. But in this case, I am not preferring to do that. This time I am going to manually add the constraint. See, usually if you see that this is auto layout or suggested constraint, which we are seeing it quite often. This one is a pin tool we often call pin. Okay, you see pin. So this pin typically, like I already gave you, if you're in a drawing sheet, you put pins in the four corners in the paper. Like that, it is going to stitch or is going to hold the edges of your particular view. So first thing, I need to highlight and click on this pin point. I told you certain thing we have to keep it a fixed one. Certain thing we can give a variation. Typically height I would like to reserve. Width, let it dynamic, because this is how we use the phone. Because the phone usually height we are get used to scroll up or down, whereas we don't prefer to have a horizontal scrolling to see the another content. So first point, remember I have selected view and I click the pin tool. Selection and the procedures are very important. I am reserving the height. I just selected the height. It means it will make a height 1600 fixed. Now, if you notice this particular button, add one constraint, something is showing up. Okay. First constraint I have added. The moment I do it, it is already marking it to red and it is also showing something. Something is not set still. But if you notice that, the very first constraint added for a view, it is 1600. Let us see what Xcode is telling me. It is saying some sort of warning or even error. In fact, this is an error. Need constraint for X position width or need constraint for Y position. You're missing something. That's what he is saying. One, yes, you informed us, okay, the height is going to be this one, and you did not tell me width. Of course, I didn't tell width, and of course, from where it is going to start and all the stuff. Few easiest way. One, I can click add missing constraint. Job done. It will try to help you, but in fact I am not going to do that. So this constraint was added, bunch of thing it has added, but I really don't want. So let me delete those constraints. We just from there where we have left. Okay, first point, this constraint seems to be not enough. Again, I'm highlighting view, going to pin tool, I'm telling one important thing, make sure you uncheck this always. I'll let you know why it has to be unchecked, but in any case, while you do your manual constraint option, make sure the constraint to margin option you uncheck it. This is a rule, as you assume or whatever way, uncheck that. Now I'm going to tell, see if you see that there is a small pin options are there. I am sticking the four edges. For example, with respect to scroll view, 0th position mean immediately where the scroll view said immediately stick the top position of view, and the left 0 or the right 0 or 10th 0, these things. So in each edges of a scroll view, the view is being put a pin. It means it is going to stick. So these four constraints I have added, but still these guys are not satisfied. Four constraints been added, still, and it is still crying, you're not supplying me width. Tell me the width. That's what it is saying. The width, I would like to keep it dynamic, but even though I reserve the height, width, whenever the scroll view size is smaller, the view should also be adjusted, or whenever scroll view size is bigger, the view the width should get extended. Whereas the height is reserved, no problem. but okay, I'm not telling the width. Probably I can highlight this view, hold control command, and simply drag a line, tell it. So the X position is horizontal. So entire horizontal thing you occupy. It means now if you see that entire thing went blue, every layout constraint means set properly. This is what. See if you see that the red things have gone. So the width I have set occupy the entire horizontal space. So whatever it is maybe. So now if you see that entire constraint being set properly, you don't see the red marking, warning or anything else. The constraints fully added. How can I verify this? Let me run the code. Running or not, I don't know. Has it been set initial view controller? Let me run one more time. Having a view and scroll view, everything added. That's fine. Maybe I need to remove the auto layout option. Scrolling enabled has been checked. Auto resize subview, I'm just going to uncheck it because auto resizing, this is not something I'm going to need. I'm going to need a manual resizing, but still I don't see the scroll. Let me put a title here. It's also gave me a couple of warning. UI view alert, unsatisfiable constraint to catch this into debugger. Something going wrong. Okay, let me start from the beginning. We can reset the constraint or remove everything. Just removed every constraint whatever been given. So this is a free form and it is having height 1600 set, and the scroll view is the very first view which has been added, and the view which is occupying 00 position 1600. Okay, let me run, or maybe I'll have a title also ready for this. Typically title should be there. I'll make sure no warnings coming. Okay, so fine. Now I have a view. First point, we have to give a constraint to this. So view, I've selected. I'm going to give a height fixed, and maybe the constraint everything I can give at this point. At one instance you can give, or multiple time you can open and give it. So it's like, you know, so it just increment everything. So I just gave them, and I need to make sure it is horizontal. Okay, do I see any mistake? It looks pretty fine. Okay, I'll put a image or anything, probably the scroll, let it come maybe later. see that. Okay, do we have any images? I'll get some images. My desktop, I have one image. So let me create a group. Sorry. I prefer to keep images in a file or any folder structure. We usually define them here. Copy if needed. We have an image. First point, I have dragged an image. Remember this particular, the navigation controller or the navigation item which you are seeing, I would like the timing hide it. I don't want to see that. Status bar and top bar, because anyway it is going to add while the application is going to run. Whatever changes you are going to do, it's not going to take effect. It is only for your how the view is coming up. So that purpose we are trying. Let me add an image. Just an image. I haven't added any constraints so far. Just want to see what exactly things are going wrong. Okay. We already have issue. The constraints are not setting proper. Let's try to set the constraint first. Bottom layout, view top, we have set, that is correct. Center X, that is for width. Leading 0, everything looking fine for me. Okay, that error went away anyway. Still I'm not able to scroll, but anyway, let me put the image into the required spot. Usually image I really don't want to disturb the width and height, because to maintain the aspect ratio. So in this case the fixed width and height I would like to keep. So I have added two constraints. And complaining, what are all the complaints? X and Y position, from where it is going to be there. So first point, where is the image? I'm going to tell with respect to the view, or maybe I can select it, tell a pin 8 pixel above. I can make sure it is with respect to a view. So top has been given, and now X position I need to give. X is going to be variable, so it's going to be some sort of center horizontal. So once you give that, all constraint being set, so I should see the image exactly at the center with the same size. Actually I see it. So this has been added, but I'm not getting the scroll yet. Anything am I missing? Scrolling enabled is there, bounce is there, everything looking fine. Height has been set. This is for image. This constraint, trailing, leading, center X, top. We remove couple of constraints so that it let it suggest for me. constraints. Okay, this one does one. No. Okay. Start it. Okay, before that let me add subsequent content so that we'll maintain. So for example, a text view, you would like to display to the bottom of this image view. See, assuming I'm keeping it over here after the image, slightly larger text view. A text view usually helpful to display your paragraph or anything, or content description or anything else. So I'm just going to keep it to the bottom. Now we have to give a constraints. One, I prefer to give a height. Maybe this is bigger. I'll reduce the height. Given a height and margin slightly 8 pixel, because these edges 8 pixel on that pixel, that edge is 8 pixel, and 17 pixel top, which is with respective to the image. So from the image 17 pixel down, it is going to be here. So this particular pin, 3 pins I have added, and I reserve the height. You see that no warnings. You see that particular from the image some 17 pixel down the text view is going to start. From the left, see that small a kind of a constraint. If you see that blue small kind of pin is there, so 8 pixel some sort of padding it has added, and here also it has added. The height has been reserved. So let's see how it appears. So I think height we can adjust accordingly, because this is by default which added the height with scrolling option. So I'm just going to create a so if you want to modify the existing constraints, you can click on it and create some sort of 42. Okay, doesn't scroll now. So everything displaying for the image and this one. So what if I see that into a smaller phone, like let me go to iPhone 4s, how it looks like, because it's slightly a smaller phone. There also we should see the same design. It's smaller phone in sense it has a lower pixel density. It's also fine, no problem. And let us see that into or also we will see into what we call in the landscape. So there also it maintains that aspect ratio top bottom. Of course I am trying to get the scroll that it doesn't appear for some reason. I'll check why it is not. And this one. Okay. Maybe some sort of bug over here. So you can check in various design how the content is appearing. So you have set the manual constraint now. So the constraint according to this design, it has a scroll view. Inside a view has been stitched on the 4 edges, and of course we have a image which is starting immediately in the view. So on the top of an image we are adding some sort of constraint pin, maybe for the top. So I have added some 8 pixel, some sort of pin, for example, in the view. After 8 pixel the image starts, the image has been height and width has been reserved, and the image has been horizontally kept into center so that the width become dynamic. So that's, we can add a kind of constraint. Having this constraint as a reference, I'm keeping this particular constraint attached for this text view. So subsequent views, what I am going to add, will have a reference to the existing content, a kind of a relation or relative to the content. So I can keep adding various constraints and maintain the aspect ratio, and whatever design or whatever form factor I can use, I can still maintain the same look and feel. For example, assuming you don't have, let me first verify why the scroll is not appearing. That appears, our job is done. Size I have set to freeform, top bar, bottom bar. So it's some toolbar I'm going to set. Looking fine for me. Okay. Still I'm not seeing. Last example. I hope in the last example we created some design. Okay, this is older one. It doesn't scroll for some reason. Navigation controller, initial view controller. We have a scroll view. Okay, scrolling enabled. Sub views. Okay, something. I'm sure I'm doing a silly mistake, but couldn't identify what exactly why the scroll is not appearing. Okay, let me try with the new view controller. We got a view controller over here, and instead of view, I'm going to keep a scroll view. First view controller ready. Inside I'm going to add a view. Keep a free form. Let's increase the height to some 900, slightly bigger. Height is also 900, fine. Since we have dragged over here, 0, 0, 600. So entire view is occupied. Time to add the constraints. Preserve the height as well. I'm giving horizontal drop down. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this one. Start. I'm going to load this one. Root view controller becomes a root view. This is a view will come back if we could disconnect it. Spawning is actually killing. UI constraint based layout debugging category on UI listed UI. Let me see what exactly going on. This one is slightly confusing. Oh, here it is. Yeah, now I got it. Okay, that was obvious mistake. First point, while I tried to set a 0, for example, I was trying to set a pin. If you see that the pin was with respect to previously, it was with respect to bottom layout guide mean, which is outside of your scroll view, because the view where I am setting is actually a sub view of your scroll view. So the pin with respect to the scroll view only it has to be. So you should have selected this one in order to make sure. For example, there is a scroll view exists. In that, at the bottom of a scroll view, you are putting a pin saying that stick to here. But previously, it was setting to something called what you call bottom layout guide, which is nothing but a view container. It's just a container outside of your scroll view or your edge of your form factor. So it was actually occupying to the edge. It is because we should have given some sort of margin, then we could have identified it. So now we have a scroll added. See this design. I have a overflowing content scroll. This black, we can get rid of it. You see how can I select the scroll view. You can uncheck the bounce. So when you uncheck the bounce, the unnecessary kind of bounces won't happen. So see that it stick to the view. So any overflowing content you can verify, display them by scrolling it. Sorry, this is a notification one. So here I'll add the images and paragraphs. Let's see how we can add a overflowing content. before that, let me clear everything, start from the beginning. Let me remove the whole view. So I have a view controller. So from here, I'm going to give a relationship that's it becomes a root view controller for this navigation controller. So this particular view controller has only one view, nothing but a scroll view. Now I'm going to drag a view, because scroll view is just a wrapper. You need a view object to display text field or image view or anything else. So this is going to be having the same width and height of your scroll view, and it is going to start exactly from the same place where your scroll view started. So the same width, and I remember it's 1600 I gave for this, slightly bigger one. So let us click on the view controller. I don't want the tab bar, or sorry, transfer toolbar or anything else. Just keep an empty view. So it's a free form. So any overflowing content which is going to be displayed in the scroll view. So according to our expectation, we are going to give a automatic width, but whereas we are going to maintain the constant height. To make that happen, first point, we have to make sure the view which is having a constant height, that is 1600 always. First constraint we are adding. I haven't touched anything, that's why these constraint won't be added. If you notice that it is only showing only one constraint. So the very first constraint I am reserving the height. So the view is going to have a fixed height. Okay. Then it is complaining about a couple of things, and it is saying you are not giving me a start and end. A start position with respect to x and y. Start, of course, x defines a width and y defines a height. Height we have already given, but x and y, the pin position, it is not actually knowing where it is. So we can give that. Make sure again select the view, select the pin tool, and make sure you uncheck this one. Here, very important, before that, make sure it is scroll view is selected. That was a mistake I did. So first one, pin 0, immediately where the scroll view starts. The left also scroll view, yes, fine. Right also scroll, great. And the bottom, here we have two choice. We have to make sure it is scroll view and set this constraint. And when you add 4 constraints, most of the error disappeared, but still we have one more error coming, and it is complaining me what is the width. The width is going to be a variable one with respect to the scroll view. So I'm going to highlight the view, and I'm just going to go saying that horizontal container, the entire horizontal view occupies center. Now that particular width problem over. So height fixed, width is variable, and the starting point of this view is going to be with respect to the scroll view. Where the scroll view starts, immediately from those edges the view is also being attached. So whatever the scroll view size get enlarged or reduced, automatically the view will be adjusted only width and all the edges. The height will always remain constant. The any overflowing height, of course the scroll can handle the task. So let me see first. So I see the scrolling happening over here. Okay, so we'll get rid of this bouncy stuff, because background, or if you want to get rid of this one as well, we have a couple of other ways. Anyway, I'll just disable the bounce effect. So I'm going to uncheck the bounce. Now we have a scroll added. So the height remains constant. The extra height is actually within the scroll. So the 1600 pixel height is being maintained, whereas the width is adjusted. Okay, let us start putting the additional UI elements like image view. Usually image views, for example, let me try to find a center here. Okay. For to maintain the aspect ratio, I would prefer to give a width and height for an image view, because I cannot compress or enlarge an image. If at all, if I do that, I would end up messing up the image quality. So I would like to keep the constant width and height for an image. So let me put an image. So by default, it would have already calculated the width and height. Assuming this is the width and height, whatever, I kept it into a center. Let us attach the constraint for this. Select the pin, reserve the width and height, make it as a unmodified. So it won't be modified. Two constraint added. Again the complaints. Let us see what are all there. And x and y as usual. So x, for example, the width, and y from where on the vertical side. So what has to be done? The y position I can do, for example, this particular pin from the top of my scroll view. Of course, scroll view has a subview called view. From the view 8 pixel distance, I'll keep the image on the top. First constraint added. Now the width, it is going to be center horizontal. That's what I need to give. Of course, let me give that. With respect to the view, I'm going to center horizontal to contain. Still a couple of issues are there. Okay, so it is saying the expected x and y. Okay, I'll come back to that, because if you see that actual position seems I have just tilted the image quite. Before that, if you end up messing certain thing, what you can do, highlight your view and clear the constraint fully, then we'll come back, because I may have moved the image slightly bit. So this I am keeping it, and I'm going to reserve the width and height. Constraint added, and with respect to the view, I'm going to keep it center horizontal. Okay, and the pin on the top of my view, I'm going to keep 8 pixel top. Now I'm done with that. So everything went away. So let's see how it appears. I see the image. Of course, it could be scrollable. The image is perfectly at the required place. If you run the same thing in a different device, let us see. Let's run this one into iPhone 6, a bigger one. How it looks like. It still displays in the desired places. It doesn't modify anything. And also we'll test it in the smaller device like iPhone 4S. iPhone 4S having a lesser density, the image may look slightly bigger. And we have the content displayed as the expected place. Had you not do this constraint, how these things will be looking like? Let us see. I'll remove the constraints. I just remove the constraint for the image alone. The view part is there. The scroll part, everything is there. If you don't add the constraint, you end up seeing this kind of view, because it doesn't know where to pin the particular view. So some of the images or some of the content has been clipped, assuming you don't have constraint for a view as well. Let me clear the constraint for that. You don't have a constraint so far. Not even a single constraint has been added. If you see that nothing, it doesn't even scroll. So you won't get the expected behavior without a constraint. But the easiest way could be what we would have done, selected, and we would have said to reset to suggested constraint. It would have added various ways to make sure how it could be, but let's see if it scrolls. It doesn't scroll. That's the reason I said most of the time your reset to suggested constraint won't work. One point of time you would end up doing a lot of manual constraint in order to get the desired view. That's the reason scroll view where we have taken as an example, because scroll view will force you to do a lot of manual resizing. So in this case I have a scroll view. I would have to clear the constraints and do everything manually. So let me clear all the constraints. So start from manual, the very first part. So reserve the height of your view, first constraint, and also make sure uncheck this one, and with respect to the scroll view 0, with respect to the scroll view 0 distance, with respect to the scroll view the trailing space, this is leading space, this is trailing space, this is top, and with respect to the bottom it should be a scroll view. And these 4 pins along with the height are totally 5 constraint you need to set. And still something missing, it is complaining about the width. So the width you can give by telling with reference to the scroll view, keep it horizontally sent. So at this point you will be seeing the scroller added to your view. At least it is scrolling. So time to set the image. Select an image, make sure you reserve the height and width for an image. First 2 constraint added, and above to your view give 8 distance, or keep the pin just away from 8 pixel from a top once this constraint added, and then give a alignment to make sure the width or the X space with respect to the view maintains into a horizontal position. So this view was set into the desired place. So now you have in a exactly same place where you preferred. So the constraining added. Let me create a slightly a kind of complex text view. I'm going to add a text view. It gives a lot of spacing so that at least you'll see the constraint where it is added. The initial spacing what I have given, slightly bigger one, because I'm going to reserve the height. So my intention, from the top of the image, some distance of top constraint I need to add, of course left and right. The bottom I am not going to add. So let me add a constraint for this first one. From the top of my image, remember, see, you have to see the image. If it is selected to view, you will end up messing it up. So with respect to the image, I am adding 18 pixel distance from the top. Okay, the first one. And also I am reserving the height. Okay, width 28 pixel distance with respect to the view. Fine, that's great. And again the 28 pixel to the trailing space with respect to the view. This is fine. So totally 4 constraints, height reserved, and of course all the 3 pins. And the bottom I haven't added. Let me add 4 constraints. Everything is set. Because with respect to the image, it will be coming some 16 pixel away. It will keep the text view. And of course to the leading distance, it is going to be some 20 pixel or 28 pixel what we saw, and the trailing space is going to be another 28 pixel. That makes sure where this particular text view should come. So we'll see that. We see that the content appears as expected. Okay, I'm going to keep one more, maybe text input or label. Make sure this is coming up to here, so I'm just going to keep it somewhere after that. Same way, maybe I'll give a feedback something. First, let us add the constraint for this. First one, we have to make reserve the height. First constraint to the top of your text view, 28 pixel top distance. What I'm adding, some 28 pixel. To the left of your view, with respect to a view, I'm adding 28 pixel. Okay, fine, this pin. And to the right, trailing space, that's also I'm adding some 28 pixel. So top 1, 2, 3, 4 constraints done. Everything set. No warning, no errors. Fine. Let us add a few more text field. Okay, text field will add because feedback makes sense with the text field. Make sure to keep a reference from where it ends. So let's keep a placeholder. Let me add a couple of other things, then I'll add the constraint for them. Okay, keep a button as well. Okay, we don't want to make it a slightly bigger. Okay, so with respect to the text field label, I'm going to add a constraint for this particular input text field. Let me select the pin tool, reserve the height, and with respect to the label, 20 pixel away from a top, and of course for the left, this one and this one. So both the side it attached to a 28 pixel with respect to the UI view, and these four looks fine, and this has been set. Let us set for this. You can attach it for multiple constraint as well by selecting it, and you can attach them. But for better understanding, I would recommend you pick the single layout and do the design one by one. 8 pixel away from the text field, and leading and trailing edges going to be pinned at 28 pixel, and the height has been reserved. Fine. And for the button, remains same. The top distance is going to be with respect to a text field. Left right, instead of adding that, probably I'll give a variable width, but I am going to reserve the height. It's complaining about thing, and let me try to, with respect to the view, I'm going to keep it center horizontal. So I think I just moved it off a little bit. In such a case, you can do one thing. It will give you an option, update frame. It doesn't set it up. Okay, I'll do one thing. I'll just do it one more time. For a button, I'm going to remove the constraints. Select the button. Clear the constraint for the button. Oh, width is also, I mean, I'm selecting the width. Okay, that I have to set it up. Height and width becomes constant with respect to the top. Okay, that's fine. And the constraint added. Now I can give a horizontal spacing. Let's So everything blue. Remember, if you see a warning, if you see an error, your constraint may be ambiguous or maybe it is overriding the existing one. You have to make sure the constraint set everything properly. In that case, you will see this kind of blue. You won't see any errors. It's so and so constraint being added in order to maintain an aspect ratio or adaptive design. So once I add this one, I see that everything set inside a scroll view. I can still, I have a lot of space because I reserve the height something to 1600. Up to that level it is going to scroll, and we can extend much more bigger components. So for testing purpose I made it as a slightly bigger one. If you are done with the design, now you can decide about giving the size of your view. So in this case, let me select the view. The view already has a constraint 1600, that you can try to reduce it and see which would be fine. So 1000, let me make it 1300. I can even reduce it. Okay, 800 looking fine. Now I am going to reduce the size of my entire view as well. So it's going to be the same size of, so it looks fine. So I tested, decided okay, this is the size would be enough to display all my content. Now I can go ahead and see the smaller scroll. So the overflowing content, everything is under the scroll, and it doesn't display the horizontal scroll, and of course the content have been kept in a respective place. Let me create a landscape view, rotate left. See, if I keep it in a landscape also, I could still see the content without any issues. The same aspect ratio or adaptive design is being maintained, irrespective of any design. For example, I can run it into a higher end device as well. So let me see how it looks like in iPhone 6 Plus, the biggest iPhone so far. In the phone version, this is the biggest one. This also, it's a smaller scroll. Of course, it is looking slightly compressed because of the reason I have set a scale. I'm just displaying the 33% because my computer monitor size itself is smaller. If I make it as 100%, so this is the actual pixel density of the phone. Since I cannot see everything, that's the reason I kept it in this way. So with that particular quality, it won't get disturbed. So for our testing purpose alone, I kept it as a smaller, so maintain a smaller aspect ratio. So any kind of form factor, your design will be perfect, and it will maintain the same design, same adaptive technique across all the form factors if we could do your constraint properly. So the constraint, the technique starts from one point. First, you have to decide what kind of height and width your particular view is going to take. In most of the cases, either width or height, possibly a constant. For example, the text input, if you see that the height is always constant, 30 pixel usually. So using that as a reference point, the rest of the part I can dynamically assign with the existing constraints. So certain UI components such as image view, where the width and height, both the thing would be set as a constant to maintain the quality and the aspect ratio. So having that as a reference point, and you can keep the other constraint. If you notice this particular paragraph, I kept the height slightly larger to make it as a constant so that it doesn't display the scroll, because scroll view, inside a scroll view won't be looking good. So I made the height constant and gave the padding or trailing and leading spaces and the top distance with respective to the image, and of course trailing and leading distance with respective to the UI view. I made sure where the text view should come up, and accordingly the rest of the components follow. So now you can create any kind of design what you think, to the left, to the right, to the whatever alignment, by having this pin tool as a reference point. Should be very careful on doing it. Make sure you have a clear picture of which you are trying to reference, from where the distance being maintained. The pin is nothing but it will stick that particular view into the respective place or whatever the distances you are providing. So from there it will try to hold, and the view will be displayed as a x and y position. But remember, in any of a case you would have to give a width and height. Height, if it is constant, the width could be a variable one, or if a width is a constant, height could be a variable one, it depending on your design. But according to the phone usage, we are get used to a kind of a longer height, whereas the width we always try to maintain whatever the size of your phone permits. So according to our design, because this is how we get used to it. So width I always try to set, mean whatever the form factor or whatever the size of my phone, I keep the width accordingly. So I prefer to have a center horizontal as a reference point, whereas the height I'll try to keep a constant. Especially this factor is true when you create a scroll view, because in every case you cannot make sure the content, every content could be displayed in all the phones. Even though for iPhone 6s Plus kind of screen, the scroll is not required, but for a smaller screen, certain view would require a scroll. So I would recommend keep a scroll view as a base view when you are creating a form or anything. Even though it is a smaller form, I would still recommend keeping a scroll view. So scroll view will always help us to maintain some sort of view panning when the view is going slightly above or slightly going beyond to the height of your phone. See, this is also sometimes helpful. For example, I can, if my keyboard is highlighting something, I can still see the rest of the content, which will help me if the keyboard is substantial places it is occupying. So that will also help you to see the content where it is highlighting. So those kind of things would be pretty helpful to have a scroll view in place. So you'll be seeing most of the design hereafter based on the scroll view. And I would want you to experiment this manual constraint additions, because this is somewhere the user get too much of confusions, and I really don't see a proper documentation for this as well. I mean, if you search through YouTube or any other way, I really don't see much of a clear example about how they are going to keep it or how the constraint could be added. So most of the point, only based on your kind of attempt to set certain view, will make you clear about the particular pin tool. Of course, this is there is one which we are already doing align, which I've already did, because the horizontal center we have already done it. But instead of selecting from it, I just took the reference from here to give a center. Or so this kind of thing. For example, alignment pin tool is something you can get used to it to make your manual constraint added. Of course, one point of time you won't be even thinking about using this auto constraints. Once you get used to it, to the manual constraint, you would never prefer to use the automatic constraint. Remember, automatic constraint, most of the time it works, but in some cases it may not work. Especially in one case it won't work, which is where the scroll view is coming. The scroll view where you add it, where you try to see overflowing content, the automatic constraint never take that as a clear way of putting a scroll view. That's the reason I took a scroll view for this example, to tell you how you can add a manual constraint. So in any other subsequent example, we'll try to add a manual constraint as much as possible, so that most of the design strategy will come to know. The subsequent example, I'm going to do much of manual constraint, and to see how our look and feel could be coming in. Of course, remember, changing the top bar, status bar, for example, in this case top bar I set to none. If I say inferred, this one come. It doesn't mean since I'm actually setting it to none, it will be removed from your view. It will be still there. The point here is this particular interface builder for our testing purpose, because the view which has been added inside a scroll view, the scroll view is actually started from 0 to 0. So this particular 0 0 would be according to phone here. So that's the reason. So this is the one which is always added after the 0 element added. So for testing purpose, I usually prefer not to show it, but in a real cases that will still appear. So for your testing purpose, so for example, what you would have happened if you do not have that particular thing disabled it, assuming I kept it for testing, I would have started my view slightly below to here. So I end up wasting substantial amount of spacing up to here, because it is showing in my understanding after that only my view starts. So I would have given a larger distance from my scroll view or any other view. So that's the reason it would have put a lot of margin at this point. To avoid that, I just for time being I made sure it does not display for some time. So I just set it to none. Then I finished my design and I saw how it is looking like. Okay, so this is one strategy. In fact, there are various ways. My design strategy at this example, I took a height or width as a reference point. But there is other way where you can create certain design based on the aspect ratio. For example, the whole container, forget about scroll view, assuming you have a whole container or whole view, you can divide it by, like, one component take 30%, another component take 25%, another component take the entire 50%. So aspect ratio also we can create. So the percentage breakup, so 25%, 30% certain component, the rest of this. But this is the aspect ratio, the dynamic view and height, you would have a lot of calculation to be done in that case. So aspect ratio also we'll see it, because of course we see that in the pin tool there is an option called aspect ratio. That also you can create, but provided such a design may be quite helpful if you have some sort of what do you call um, bottom bar buttons, and where the view appears on the top or bottom, you can keep the aspect ratio. So aspect ratio based design also you can create and divide the entire view container into various breakups and various percentage you can give, so that the view adjusted according to the aspect ratio. So that's another design strategy, but entirely creating a manual constraint gives you a more control about the placement of your UI elements. So understanding is very important, and this is one place where even advanced level iOS developer claim to be failing. So at this point you have to test it and experiment. But once you get used to it, it will be pretty straightforward and quite easy. So I'm going to give you maybe the whole afternoon. Of course, tomorrow some 1 or 2 hour I'll give you. If you have any question, you can straight away ask me. I'll try to help you. But whatever thing you are doing at this point, take a break on it and move to this example in this case. I really don't want to wait for these areas to be covered, but I want to see how we are going to handle the manual constraint starting from this session itself. Like once I complete it, start this example, get a couple of images, create your own design you think of, try to add a manual constraint, make sure it works in the same way across all the form factors. Any kind of design you imagine, but you have to make sure that works perfect across all the devices or all the form factors. If you have any question, of course you can let me know. Okay, so start that thing